In this week's episode, I'm joined by James Felton Keith, CEO at InclusionScore. This week, we're talking about groundbreaking firsts at the Oscars, the rise of women-led boardrooms, Peppa Pig, and more. Hey there, my name is Bernadette Smith, and I'm a keynote speaker and writer. My pronouns are she and her. Welcome to 5 Things in 15 Minutes, my weekly show where I bring good vibes to DEI. That is good vibes to diversity, equity, and inclusion with a little dash of corporate social responsibility. What I found is there are lots of news stories about what's going wrong in the world and lots of negative data. But there are also a lot of things going right. That's what I like to focus on. I search for stories that we can be inspired by and learn from. My hope is to inspire you to experiment with some of these actions and policies to help you build a more inclusive world. Let's get started. Welcome to the show, James. It is a treat to have you here today.
Thanks for having me. I don't know why, but the word Peppa Pig made me want to laugh. So anyway, but it's good to be here. Thanks for having me. Yeah,
absolutely. You know what? It's all about the good vibes. So I'm glad you're laughing before we even get into it. Can you tell folks a little bit about yourself and what InclusionScore is all about?
Yes. Hey everybody. I'm just plain old, a lot of first names, but you can call me by any of them. CEO at InclusionScore. We are an insurtech, the ISO 30415 standard for diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. We also wholly own an insurance brokerage because we tie a lack of DEI to professional liability premiums, which we think is the real financial driver behind DEI pervading corporate life. So that's what we do in a nutshell. We got a whole lot of bells and whistles that go with that, but that's what we do in a nutshell.
It's so smart. So can you talk a little bit more about the relationship between insurance and DEI and the risk mitigation part of things? I think folks would be really interested in that.
Yeah, well, I think there is a $37 or so billion a year relationship annually between, again, inclusivity or deliberate equity and inclusion initiatives globally and professional liability. For anyone who's not familiar, when you have a grievance with your company, whether that company is a city, a university, a for-profit company, they're all companies, by the way. When you drive into new cities and it says incorporated in 1895, that city is a corporation. So anyway, when you have a grievance and you settle in or out of court, or they compensate you, or even if it's kind of hush money, whistleblower, we're sorry, that's insurance. Insurance always pays the bill. And so, the relationship as it has scaled is we're seeing an environment that's even more risky because now more people than who we would normally think of as claiming retaliation or discrimination, women and those, although many minority groups. Now we have other groups, not just in this country, not just, cis, straight, white men claiming retaliation or discrimination, but we see a similar thing in India and South Africa with whatever the majority population is. And so as these things work themselves out in court, or at least our threats of going to court, it is actually rising professional liability premiums because insurers are looking at companies who don't have the ability to mitigate risk or justify their actions. Again, it's increasingly risky. So from an economic standpoint, the relationship is pretty hand in hand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And especially since I know I find myself talking a lot more about the business case these days. Maybe you never stopped. But that's certainly sort of the angle that we have to use right now to keep doing this work. So I think it's so important that that's sort of the angle that you're bringing to this, because I think folks, a lot of them might not know about the liability of moving away from DEI.
Yeah, I think, and I've seen this, even people who are in the industry. I think, I was just with a COO of you know, the largest, maybe now second largest insurance carrier in the country. And they were like, right, this makes so much sense. We got to get our arms around this. And they were just asking me, do you think we've mispriced the types of insurance that we sell? Which my answer was yes. And secondly, do you think there's enough of it out there? And my answer was no. Right. So, yeah, I mean, so we'll incentivize, good behavior. We'll continue to make the business case. Yeah, I kind of never stopped, or I kind of always came to this from the business case standpoint as a macroeconomist. But as a queer Black man from Detroit who lives in Harlem and travels everywhere else, I think everyone's always assuming I'm coming to them to browbeat them about DEI. But when I tell them it's costly, they're shocked, right? So, I think we have to keep making that argument. And I am confident that it will win over time. And that it has been. I mean, when you really think about it, we're in Women's History Month. We've been winning. We're taking some setbacks, at least rhetorically right now, but folks should be reassured in knowing that the law has not changed. We are still, there aren't enough, white men or men in general across the globe to do all the work. Yeah. And the world needs more products and services to make our lives livable and comfortable. And so we will endeavor to put all the women to work in the workforce and all the other people that fit into those 27 protected classes that usually trigger a professional liabilities claim when they say you retaliated or discriminated against them. Yeah. So
27.
Yeah. The way we define diversity is it's 27 protected class categories. So we're not just like, of course, there are 8+ billion types of diversity on the planet.
Sure.
Right. But 27 age, gender. I think people normally think about gender and race, right? The scariest ones. But, you got neurodivergence, you got disability, you've got economic background. I mean, a lot of these programs can benefit, again, whatever the majority class is in a particular country, whether it's, poor, straight white men in Idaho here, whether it's, Hindu men in Chennai, those are protected classes that we often see retaliation or discrimination against. So yes, we like to use 3 big numbers at Inclusion Score. The number 4, which are the type of services related to DEI that companies distribute. The number 27, which are the number of diversity types or protected classes. And the number 32, which are the 32 risk domains of every company's operation with regards to the ISO 30415 standard. I know I threw out a lot of numbers right there, and I'm sorry.
We'll make sure that that your information gets put in the show notes so folks can take a look. Well, you know what? I don't know about you, but I know in New York, spring is coming. Here in Chicago, it's a beautiful day. I think we had a little bit of that last week as well. And I feel like the energy is starting to shift. I think there has been stagnation, and it's not just the weather, but I think that there has been stagnation. There's been fear. Yeah. Things are starting to move again over here. I hope that they are as well. And I'm just so glad because these conversations they're picking up. People are starting to realize that waiting is not going to make this DEI work go away. It's just going to make it harder later. And so this momentum, it's going to build again, and opportunities are going to come to those who are showing up, like you, like me. We're showing up, and to those that we know, like, and trust, and we can be that person for others. And so my message this week in 5 things is to shine bright, because when we dim our lights, they win. So let's go, James.
Yeah. No, thank you for this. I think, you doing an upbeat show about this it is really important right now. And I do think we're rebounding. We were a little shocked January and February, and it was also very cold, especially where you are and where I am. And now it's 65 degrees in New York. So I feel like everyone's outside and singing, and we'll see.
That's right. See. I'm going to go play some outside pickleball tonight. Can't wait.
Oh, are you really? So you're in the game. You're like, you're one of the new players. I need to
Yeah,
get out.
I've been obsessed for 2 years. So I was playing a little bit last month in 40-degree weather. I'm ready to play tonight in 60-degree weather.
I'm worried about breaking the ankle, but maybe I need to get out there like you. Yeah. I used to play
It's
basketball. Now I'm terrified to play anymore. I don't want to break anything.
the
I'm risk
joy
averse.
is the joy is worth the movement. Whatever your choice happens to be, the joy is worth it. All right, well, let's get into this week's good vibes. The first story this week came from the Academy Awards last week, where Paul Tazewell shattered a glass ceiling by becoming the first Black man to win Best Costume Design for his work on Wicked. What I love is that his work really wove storytelling into he wove storytelling into his work. So Elphaba's dark gowns subtly echo nature's resilience. Glinda's sparkling pastels reinforce privilege. I love this.
Yeah. I think it's fascinating to me that, I mean, yeah, it is fascinating that even color, it can be codified into having culture. And I mean, color from a, textiles standpoint. It
Sure.
really just goes to show when you look at what those artists do, that every single thing we touch has a cultural perception, et cetera, to it. I wear this white shirt for a reason. So I'd probably rather be, in a tank top, but I don't want to offend all your guests. But I think it's amazing. We watched the Oscars, and that was really a good moment. It reminded me of the Black Panther costume moment a few years ago. Yeah.
And she won. She was the first Black woman, I believe, to win. That was Ruthie Carter in 2019, I think she won, and then again in 2022.
It's crazy that was 2019.
Yeah.
My mind is still in 2020, but anyway, 5 years.
All right. The second story this week comes from Piermont Bank, which is defying corporate trends where women hold 78% of board seats, more than double the U.S. average. And this has meant that it's driving smarter decisions, such as a permanent hybrid schedule, prioritizing employee well-being over rigid office mandates. It also has status as a minority depository institution, which further highlights the power of leadership in reflecting the communities it serves. So I love this.
No, me too. Totally. I think, and that just goes along with the trends. We were just looking at some data saying that the wealth transfer from boomers to, their ex or children, especially the older ones, it's going to put some like $2 or $3 trillion in women's hands. And so it's transforming the wealth management industry, how people engage them. There's also some interesting data about they make better investment decisions. But I'll tell you one anecdotal story about your state. When I got into the insurance industry, I would sell tech to the industry, and I had this woman who was my client at a company called Trustmark, and they do a lot of worksite insurance. And I got to their office, and it seemed like everyone was women. And they're from the executive sponsor all the way down to the woman at the front desk. And they were these like older white-haired women with like really cute bobs. I was like, and I was fascinated because I'm normally worked in manufacturing spaces. I was like, where did you all come from? And I was a kid. I was like 25. Like, how is this happening? And she was like, well, during the war, the women who brought me into this workforce, we all moved into the service sector. Not the world is service sector. We're the ones we're here. We run it. We have all of these jobs, all of our actuaries, all of our insurance sales folks. So, again, if people are, not so hopeful about what's happening in the market, I would just point to the fact that we absolutely need women in the workforce. I think over the course of the next few decades, they'll take over being the majority on most board seats everywhere globally. And I think we'll be in a better place for it. Seriously. And I say that as a guy who.
Well, thank you. I hope so. I hope you're right. You heard it here first, folks.
The trends are the trends. The trends are the trends.
That's right. All right. The third story this week is about the new Peppa Pig theme park in Dallas-Fort Worth, which is setting a new standard for accessibility in family entertainment. So it was designed from the ground up with children with disabilities in mind. So it features wheelchair-friendly rides, sensory guides, quiet spaces for those needing a break. All staff receive autism sensitivity training, and visitors can also use a Hero Pass for easier ride access. $40 million investment in this theme park. It is brilliant.
Yeah. Again, when you look at the business case, businesses, regardless of what's happening in political and social rhetoric, are just going after their market. As we've seen, not only diagnosis of, again, neurodivergence, but also acknowledgement of certain disability. I'm looking at them as two separate categories right now.
Mm-hmm.
They'll likely merge and do interesting things at some point. DEI won't be what it is tomorrow versus what it is today, but companies are going after their market. So it's not even just, I work in the internal employment space, but really what's driving this is external, need and want to engage all of our identities. Companies have an insatiable demand for your identity, your personal data. They want to know you and they want to figure out how to get you the thing that you need that I wouldn't necessarily. And they want to figure out the price for it.
Mm-hmm.
So now I love this, and I love that it's in Dallas Fort Worth. I've only been there once, but I love the disruption of, just sort of what's happening in Texas in general. So I love it as
Yeah,
a
I
new.
had a good vibe last week from the state of Texas as well. So highly unusual, let's say, to have two Texas stories on the show
Yeah,
2 weeks in a row. But hey, it's
Texas.
a sign of things to come. I'm confident of it.
Yes, yeah. Texas will come along. We'll get there.
Yep,
We'll get there.
absolutely. Okay, the fourth story this week is about adoption support as an employee benefit. It's slowly gaining ground. TCW and Bank of America are leading the way, offering up to $30,000 for adoption costs alongside paid leave. So, about
Yeah.
42% of companies offer fertility benefits, but only 20% reimburse adoption costs, and 37% provide paid leave. So, there's a really big gap here.
Yeah.
And private adoptions can cost up to $40,000. So
Yeah.
these benefits can make a real impact and ensure equitable family building.
Yeah, my sister and our COO is a big, adoption advocate. Her and her husband just adopted, well, not just, but about 5 years ago. And yeah, it was a long process. It was expensive. And again, I like that companies are thinking about this, and we should just sum it up in one word. It's about care. Too often, the burden of care, whether you're caring for young people or older people, et cetera. I know a lot of people my age, as I am, we're caring for 80-year-olds and 8-year-olds right now. And the cost to do that, again, as the economist in the room, I just have to ring the bell and say, like, there's a cost associated with care, whether it is desired or inherited or you name it. And companies, as a distributor of value, as a distributor of capital, need to be with us hand in hand as we endeavor to take care of our families. So yeah, that number needs to scale. So thanks for highlighting.
Absolutely. And when it does, you'll hear about it on 5 Things in 15 Minutes. All right. You're setting me up here. I can't help it. All right. So the last story this week comes from the Miss Universe organization, where Bella Bautista is making history as the first transgender contestant in Miss Georgia.
Yeah.
So this is another great story from the U.S. South. So Miss Universe has allowed transgender contestants since 2012, but inclusion has been really slow. There have only been 2 trans women who have competed. And Bautista is a former college cheerleader and trans right advocate who has testified against anti-trans legislation in Georgia and founded a nonprofit empowering trans youth.
Yeah. I think,
bit by bit.
Well, yeah, I saw that headline, and again, outside of the, everyone needs beauty pageants being, gorgeous, at least in my opinion. Hats off to people who are, again, doing it down south, doing it in Georgia. I used to be on faculty at the University of Georgia, and it caught me off guard when I got the call to teach a course on inclusion and insurance down there. Living in New York, I didn't know that they were the #1 ranked school for insurance, and that their law professors wanted to talk about this there. And so, there are brave people in, the U.S. South, and we were even attacked in Georgia and tried to, in the class by the former lieutenant governor. But yeah, interesting things are happening in Georgia. When I think about cities like Atlanta, you just go, oh, of course. So, again, that groundswell of people coming together in cities will hack whatever sort of resistance is in the South. And we see that in cities like Atlanta and Dallas and Houston. Houston is a huge city. You can't forget that one. So
yeah,
that's interesting.
It takes so much bravery, right? And it just like the courage required to put yourself out there in that way when when our laws are making trans people seem less than human. Like this is a big deal, and she's going to have conversations with folks who have never met a trans woman before, and they're going to love her, and bit by bit the world will change.
That really is. It's just stories. I think To Be Human is a story. The more we tell our stories to each other, the better off we are. But you're right. I mean, there's an extra, I think, layer of bravery to do it there. I ran to New York as soon as I, became an adult. And so hats off to everyone who is somewhere else.
Yeah.
And it ain't even easy here, but it's, again, Georgia's Georgia.
That's right. All right, well, let's move into this week's Good Vibes to Go. I'll share my Good Vibe to Go, and then I'll invite you to share yours. This Women's History Month, a shout out to Karen Catlin, who will send you actionable tips to be a better ally at work and in life straight to your inbox. You can subscribe now at betterallies.com, and that will also be in the show notes. So what is your Good Vibe to Go?
I should have thought about this more before. I think the fact that I have been able to meet and adopt as a new mentor the woman who created employment law, Dawn Bennett Alexander, who is also professor emeritus at the University of Georgia. My good vibe is when I was on a cliff about 2 months ago and I was close. She's actually the one who called me to talk me off. I probably seem extra upbeat right now, like everything is fine, the economy will work itself out. But she called me to let me know, like, that John Lewis would crack jokes to her, and he never lost his joy, even as he was going through everything he was going through. And so she just told me to get myself together and not to lose mine. So I am my good vibes to go is I'm trying to leverage her words and find those joyful moments every day, not just work through it, as people say on my LinkedIn feed. I'm trying to joy through it. So
all right, well then I think you should try some pickleball. I think that's really totally. That's it, right?
Yeah. My gym
it gives us the energy to keep up the good trouble, James.
Yeah, I like that play on words too. That's a good one.
Thank you so much for joining me today. You have been a wonderful guest. How can folks get in touch with you?
I'm just at InclusionScore.org, or you can find stuff on me personally and upcoming talks. And my latest book, Data is Labor, is out at JamesFeltonKeith.com. It's also wherever you go and buy books, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, you name it. So I'm on the internet.
Awesome. Well, such a treat to have you. And folks, get in touch with James, and I hope you all have a great week. Thank you so much. If you don't already get the 5 Things newsletter, you can subscribe at 5thingsdei.com. Thank you for listening to 5 Things in 15 Minutes. I hope you found yourself inspired by at least one of this week's stories. If you did, would you mind sharing it with a colleague and leaving us a review on your favorite podcasting platform? And if you don't already get my 5 Things newsletter, join at 5thingsdei.com. I'm Bernadette Smith, and I'll see you next week right here for 5 Things in 15 Minutes, bringing good vibes to DEI.